Welcome back to another episode of Black Girl Iowa, where we celebrate and amplify the voices of Black women who are creating impact and paving the way in our communities. I'm your host, Emily, and today's episode is all about resilience, determination, and the power of representation, especially in spaces where we don't often see ourselves. In this conversation, my guest will talk about her journey from Cedar Rapids to Iowa State, the challenges of being a Black woman in STEM, creating spaces for the next generation, and why planning for your future decades in advance can transform your life. So let's go ahead and jump into the interview. All right, everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce today's guest to the show. Dr. Cimone Wright-Hamor is an engaging communicator and leading expert in helping students prepare for life after high school. Cimone has spent the last decade working at various public and private organizations, including Fortune 500 companies like Microsoft, state governments, national laboratories, and acquired startups such as SmartAg. She founded Hey Cimone to help students confidently navigate college and becoming indispensable employees. Cimone obtained her Ph.D. in computer engineering from Iowa State University in 2022, becoming the first Black woman to do so. In addition to her Ph.D., she also holds a master's and bachelor's degrees in computer engineering from Iowa State. She has been quoted in saying, "My mission is to help 1 million students obtain college degrees and full-time job offers before graduation." So, ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary friends, I'd like to introduce and welcome to the podcast, Dr. Cimone Wright-Hamor. Thank you so much for being here, Cimone.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So a little backstory before we kind of get into questions and all that fun stuff. I had the pleasure of meeting Cimone 2 years ago. Has it been 2 years?
Yes, it has.
I did. Okay. So I currently, as you guys know, I'm at Iowa State, and I had the pleasure of implementing their first and second admitted student day festivities and programming for incoming students that were going to be first year Cyclones. And the second year that I did it, we had Cimone. She did an amazing alumni panel where we had alumni from each one of the colleges come and talk about their experiences and some of the advantages to being Cyclones and graduating from Iowa State. And it was a phenomenal panel, you guys. I mean, I feel like facilitating is like your thing. It has to be like your niche, right?
Partially. I think the key to it is I am coming from non-traditional angles.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, how can I systemize what's available in a way where it's not normally brought together to create something unique for each student?
Yes. And I really think with a lot of our feedback that we got from that session was the uniqueness of it and how free-flowing the conversation was. I've done so many panels and I've seen so many panels where the conversation is really always talking about, oh, these are all the wonderful and great things that I'm doing. But I really feel like because it was such a well-rounded conversation, we were speaking more about experience, about, yes, I may have failed at one or two things, but here's how I turn those into lessons. And I thought the students really enjoyed it. And I know the parents most definitely did also. So I wanted to have you on the show because, you know, you have excelled in STEM, achieving a Ph.D. at Iowa State, being the first Black woman to do so in computer engineering. But before we go into all of your accolades, I want to talk about young Cimone. So young Cimone, tell us about where you grew up. What are some things that really stuck out to you in your experience as a Black girl growing up in Iowa?
So I grew up in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I went to Kennedy High School. Fun fact that most people actually don't know is I actually failed every class through the 6th grade, except math.
I'm sorry, what? No way.
No, I really do. I actually have my report cards. I failed every single subject, all of the Iowa test basic skills up and through the 6th grade.
Wow. Okay. So what made math stick out to you?
Money. If my thought process was, if I can't count and the cashier gives me back the wrong amount and pockets the other, I won't know the difference.
Okay. Yeah. That definitely makes sense. So 6th grade, you are finally achieving academically? What was kind of a turning point for you to want to excel in other subjects outside of math?
There were two keys to this. The first one is I was in Big Brothers Big Sisters,
Okay.
and my big sister told me she'd pay me $20 for every A.
Okay.
And then the other piece was I came across a teacher who challenged me, and she said,
Mm-hmm.
Simone, I don't actually think you're as stupid as you're leading people to believe.
Mm-hmm.
And she seriously challenged me every single class. And so I went from straight F's to straight A's in one summer.
The other thing that I really want to talk about is excelling in math and science. Money was definitely that determining factor, but obviously learning more about science and all of those different things, where did that passion come from? Because Iowa State's biggest college within the university is liberal arts and sciences. We don't see a lot of women going into science or math leading majors and then doing those professions. Can you talk to us a little bit about kind of some of the things that you partook in that really ignited your passion around STEM, the STEM field and those courses?
Yeah, so early on, my big sister's husband was a science teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So in seventh grade, I had this big science project, and me and him built a castle out of real materials, and it weighed about 120 pounds. And that was a bonding moment for me and him, and that put me on the path to STEM. But I get to high school, and I'm a junior. I'm set to graduate a year early. I decide I'm not going to do that. And in my head, I was just going to be able to sit at home and go to school for one class so I could qualify for sports. And my grandmother was like, absolutely not. So she ends up getting me in contact with a man at the time. His name is Aaron Green. He was a diversity and inclusion officer for Cedar Rapids School District. And from him, I get this internship at Rockwell Collins, programming, doing software development. And I get involved in the National Society of Black Engineers.
Okay.
So when I got involved with the National Society of Black Engineers, I went to the national conference, and I'd never seen so many Black people who were professionals in one setting. And I was like, I think I'm going to be an engineer.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so awesome that you got that experience to see those professionals. I feel like that's one of the things that is unique to Black people being from here and growing and developing here is we have our communities, we have our community leaders and things like that. But a lot of the times we don't get exposure to seeing Black people in different areas, doing different things. Not to say that there aren't black professionals in our hometowns. There definitely are. But I think something similar is I actually got a journalism scholarship coming out of high school, and I got to go to Fordham University and do a communication and journalism workshop at Fordham for a week. And it wasn't just seeing all of these Black professionals that were everything from TV anchors to news editors to fashion photographers and doing all of these things in New York and globally. But it was seeing the representation of people of color doing all of these different things. And they were from all different parts of the world. Granted, I didn't necessarily go into journalism, but that didn't necessarily mean that it couldn't happen at some point. And I mean, I guess this podcast is a way for me to use my degree. So tell me about the national conference and Black Engineers. So is that an organization that you're still involved with?
Yes. So I've been involved with SB since 2009. And I've continued my involvement since then. So the national conference, the National Society of Black Engineers, has the largest student-run organization in the world.
Wow.
Every year they have an annual conference, and it is the largest career fair in the United States.
Wow. Where is it usually held?
Well, they've got to a point now where they can only really do 4 locations. So last year it was held in Atlanta. This upcoming year, it's going to be in Chicago.
Okay.
But the first time I went, it was held in Vegas.
Well, even better.
A high schooler in Vegas.
A high schooler going to Vegas, that's pretty epic.
I mean, but I was just excited to be in Vegas.
Right.
That experience, when I got there, we were really competing in the math piece.
Mm-hmm.
And so not only did I get to see other high schoolers, but I also got to see up and coming freshmen and sophomores that were in college.
Mm-hmm.
That experience really helps acclimate me to like, these are my people.
Yeah. Okay, that's awesome. So, talking a little bit about you get to high school, you have this awesome experience, you get an internship. Tell me about your path to Iowa State, because with the way the state is divvied up, if you are east of Interstate 35, you technically are going to the University of Iowa, which you are like a 30-minute drive from. What was the reason of going west an hour and 30 minutes to Ames, and kind of tell me about what your experience was from being a first year computer engineering major and then your path to not only getting your master's, but then also getting your PhD.
So I wasn't even set to study engineering. I also was not set to stay in Iowa. I had a full ride to University of Michigan to run track and study accounting.
Okay. That's awesome.
My mom has my brother my senior year in high school, and I decided then that she was going to need a little bit more of my help.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to my failover, which was engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And I applied to Iowa State. Iowa State gave me the whole first year paid for.
That's amazing. So going in, so you have a little brother. Talk to me a little about just what your experience was like at Iowa State and some of the things that you may have done. I know you implemented some software that the university is still using, actually.
Yeah. So the beginning was humble and so much fun. Mm-hmm. My mom then gets a stroke my sophomore year in college.
Oh my God. Okay.
And I end up taking on my little brother because she's hospitalized. Mm-hmm. And the various people at the university were very supportive. Mm-hmm. There were plenty of times where my teachers, as I'm taking exams, would actually just take him with them and just keep him busy while I take my exam or my quiz. Oh, wow. A lot of my peers stepped up and helped so that I could do homework. There was a lot of support that came to help for that year. Mm-hmm. It took my mom about 6 months to get out of the hospital. Mm-hmm. Another 3 months to kind of learn how to do things again. Right. And then another 3 months to kind of transition back and taking care of him.
Right. And so your little brother came to Ames to live with you. Wow. I mean, and, I really think that really speaks to just the resilience of Black women, right? It's like, we have to keep going. So for you to be a young undergrad taking on the responsibility of a 1 or a 2-year-old, plus getting all your coursework done, hoping to still get the good grades so you can keep scholarships and things like that. Yeah, that is highly, highly commendable. So at what point then did you kind of realize that not only was this something that you definitely wanted to do, but can you also talk to us about what that software is and kind of what your thought process is? And is that something that you did like in undergrad, or did you do that in doing your master's work?
So the application is actually a mobile app. It started off just on Android, and the idea behind the app was to be able to say where I am currently and where I want to go and what bus is going to come by my closest location. That's all we implemented at the time. And we didn't even call it My State app. I think we called it SciBus or something like that. Okay. And at the time, the guy on my team, his name was Josh. Josh worked for IT, and he convinced them to take on the work and stand on it.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it eventually turned into My State.
Yeah. Yep. And I use it every day to track the 23 when I'm ready to go home. So that is awesome. So you get your master's, you get your PhD just a few years ago. And the next thing I kind of want to really go into, so the conversation that I've had a couple of times on this podcast so far is really talking about Black women creating space in professional corporate spaces. With your, with what you are doing, and I know you do consulting for quite a few different companies and organizations. Representation, I feel like the higher you go up, gets less and less. Even in my position with being in higher ed, I feel like the majority of the time, we'll step into a conference room or I'll step into a meeting with a presentation, and everyone's just kind of like, "What is she doing here?" So being a Black woman, being in STEM and doing the work that you do with the knowledge that you have, can you talk a little bit about how that experience has kind of molded you? And then maybe what are some growing pains, some things that you've learned along the way?
Yeah. Being a STEM, especially as a Black woman, can be very isolating.
Mhm.
And one of the key things I learned this from my friends who are actors.
Okay.
They taught me the importance that it's not appropriate to bring all aspects of yourself to every environment.
Mhm.
And that when you are in these different settings, you're actually acting. And I comprehended this when they said to me, "Would you ever let another man touch you the way you let your husband touch you?" And I was like, "No, of course not."
Absolutely not.
Right? Because we understand that's not appropriate
Mhm.
for that situation and that person.
Mhm.
Okay, so take the same thing, but now switch it instead of people, environments. Things that are okay for you to do and say at home may not be appropriate for your workplace environment. It may not be appropriate for the mall, or it may not be appropriate for giving a keynote on stage.
Mhm.
It is up to us to delineate which versions and what portions of ourselves are appropriate for each different environment. And that often means being culturally aware and sensitive. So if I went to work right now and I told somebody, "Hi, Alicia,"
Mhm.
it wouldn't resonate. They don't even know who that is.
Right.
And so that's just another indication that what I said was inappropriate for that particular environment. And once I understood how to blend those two together, now I can code switch between environments without feeling that sense of guilt or feeling like I'm being two-faced.
Right. I also think too that that thought process really helps with those misconceptions that are of us in the workplace. For me, it was I typically don't say good morning. I just walk in and I sit down and I'm doing my work, right? And I think that in a way, like for me, I can understand that. I'm not saying that if anything, I say good morning to make sure that people know like Emily doesn't have an attitude or anything like that. But for me to kind of address and say good morning, it's more so just to announce my presence and that I'm here, I'm ready to work, I'm ready to get the job done. But I also think, in a way, something that you said about your actor friends, the appropriateness, one of the hardest things for me to learn is that not everybody needs access to who you are, what you've been through, and what your story is. That was a huge thing for me because I felt like every time I would open up and say, "I've gone through this, this has been my experience," those are the things that are quickly used against me in a moment where somebody else feels threatened. And because of that, now it's just like, okay, cool. So now I know that I can't really talk to you guys like about watching House of the Dragon over the weekend or anything like that, because those are just not things that we are going to bond over. And I am now a lot more reserved in the workplace because I don't really want anyone to have access to me and to the things that I've been through and in my experience. So I think that that's definitely critical. So what are some misconceptions then as you're walking into these conference rooms and boardrooms and having these conversations? What are some misconceptions that you're commonly seeing as a woman in STEM?
One of my favorite ones is that I'm not technical. They just assume that because I'm the woman in the room, there's no way I'm the engineer. Another one, I'll give a prime example of what happened. I joined this company this first week, and they had this issue that they have been toiling with for about 9 months. And they presented the issue to me, and in 3 days, I gave them a solution. So the issue they had was they were waiting on these parts to arrive so they could put this machine together and do some evaluation. The parts were on back order. They kept calling the company. No kidding. They called and emailed once a day. I had to inform them that that's called harassment. And then my solution to their problem was to ask the company, which we've already signed an NDA for the specs to make the cables. Because we had a space division. I was like, they can make parts for NASA that can make these cables.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Voila. Less than a week later, we get the specs and the cables are made. Cool. Because I came from a different background, I understood to look in my backyard before I go out to try to purchase it.
Right.
They all came from middle income. If you need it, you just go buy it. You don't ever go look to see if it's in the fridge first. So our thought process to solve the problem was completely different. Their thought process was going to take us another year.
Yeah. And cost more money.
Our thought process was saving us money, giving us the cables in a week, 2-week turnaround. And so that we could go off and do the project. But that's the benefit of having somebody from a different background. We are solving the same problem, but my approach will look different from yours because we don't have the same life experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't really understand is that there are times where we really truly do have to just be resourceful. And it's not, I'm going to sit and wait for something to happen. No, you have to be the person just to go make it happen. And I feel like that really speaks also to representation, why we need diverse perspectives in those areas, and especially in those STEM areas as well. I really hope that there are other Black women, Black girls that are interested in STEM, really excel in math and science. I hope that they listen to this show and are inspired by some of the work that you've already done and the achievements that you've had. So what motivates Cimone to keep going and to being not only someone that is resourceful and someone that shows up in the conference room, but also someone that shows up for those that are younger that are, on the same path as you?
Two things. The first is I like to see continuous improvement. So track my progress on everything.
Yep.
And then the second is I'm trying to give back to the next generation. And I believe that people don't get angry at what you tell them. They get angry at what you have and they have to figure out. So my whole mission behind creating all these systems and showing students how to accelerate their career with college is just that. I'm removing all these cloaks. You're like, okay, so marketing told you it's this, it's actually that. And I'm doing that particularly because what happens is these students get out of college. So for their whole life, their education has been super, super structured. They get on the job and they expect that same structure and so on. They don't know how to handle the ambiguity of the tasks and the things they've been assigned to. So they do nothing.
On-the-job training is already hard enough. I've been in so many situations where it's been, okay, cool, so here's your project, figure it out. And then I want an update in 6 weeks. That's literally all I have to go on. And because there are students that are just so used to that structure, it's hard to think outside. So that message of here are the tools when you have to figure it out on your own are really important, as opposed to that false idea of this is how it's going to be. Because I had a vision of what college and life after college was going to be like when I graduated in 2008, and nothing has come to fruition. Everything has been, I don't want to say a dumpster fire, but to have to graduate during like one of the worst economic recessions in our country's history, that was not easy. And then I couldn't imagine for students that are either graduated last year coming up, inflation is out of control. So it's definitely hard. And, you have to be resourceful. Absolutely. So then my last question to you, Cimone, is thinking back to young Cimone when not really doing so hot in school, but finally having those people really pour into you and lead you on the path where you are. I want you to think about if young Cimone were looking you in the face right now, what are maybe one or two pieces of advice that you would say to her to kind of keep her inspiration up and encourage her to pursue the path of a career in STEM?
I would tell her to guard her mind against negative thoughts and opinions. and to continue to plan out her life decades in advance.
I need you to expand on this decades in advance thing.
Yeah. So where I am now, I planned when I was in the seventh grade. I had a very clear picture of the job that I would have. I knew I'd have a PhD. I didn't know in what.
Mm-hmm.
I knew the type of house that I wanted, lifestyle. I did not say I was going to get married, although I am. That was not it.
Yeah, I feel like the love thing kind of sneaks up on you when you're so focused. So I get that.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. But yeah, it was very, very crystal clear. I even got in the ballpark of the range of salary that I would make within
Okay.
5,000.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened is my high school years ended up being a blur because I internalized that vision so much in my head. I was already there.
Mm.
And the rest of what I was doing in high school was just required steps that I knew I needed to take.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wouldn't say I had blinders on, but I was so focused in high school that I didn't really hang out and do what most high schoolers do.
Mm-hmm.
It was very obvious that I was focused on something.
Mm-hmm.
And when I graduated high school, everybody was happy. I did not realize that when I walked across the stage, I was one of two minorities that walked across the stage with honors.
Mm. Yeah.
To me, it was just, that was a plan. I made the plan. I followed the plan.
Right.
Along the way, I didn't really have any adjustments until I got to high school, or until I got to college, where I had planned to graduate in 4 years and I ended up graduating in 5. But I don't have any regrets because I did pretty much all the things you could possibly do as a college kid, including studying abroad, which was an absolute amazing experience.
Where did you
I
go?
went to Taiwan for 6 months.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I loved it.
Uh-huh.
That was a good experience because it gave me a break from having a negative stigma of being Black.
Mm-hmm.
Over there wasn't a negative stigma. To them, everything Black people did was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Music, dancing, just literally, they were just super obsessed.
Yeah.
And needed that.
Mm-hmm.
While I was over there, I also dabbled in studying Buddhism. And it became very obvious because all of my social media posts were super deep.
And thought-provoking, right? I love that.
But that was the first time that I realized there was some childhood trauma that was impacting decisions that I was making and kind of suppressing my real desires. And so I had to start making some choices in my life. I'm used to this huge shift in who I've become. So by the time I come back to this state, I'm like a totally different person.
Right, right. And, you touched on something, and, this typically happens with my interviews is that I give you this list of questions and then you say something and I'm like, wait, we're going to go ahead and hook a left here. So I'm going to hook a left. And I feel like you taking the time to have this experience, the study abroad experience, but within that, find things within yourself that either you enjoyed and you didn't know because you never gave yourself the time, but also healing parts of yourself that you didn't know were wounded. I feel like as Black women, we are born into this stereotype, right? That we have to be strong, we have to be independent, we have to be focused and ready for anything, right? But at the same time, I feel like, unfortunately, there's never a lot of room for us to identify, I like to do this thing, but I love to do this thing. Yeah. I remember, this thing that happened when I was 8 years old, I thought it was teasing. It was actually trauma, and it actually is impacting how I have relationships now. I feel like that is going to speak volumes in this conversation because as someone that is as accomplished as you are still taking the time, identify yourself. Like, you are Cimone, you have a PhD, you have a master's, you have a bachelor's, you have a successful business, you have all of these things, but you are still Cimone, a person. You're not a monolith, right? And I appreciate you sharing that piece, because with this whole podcast, that was my awakening, was the idea of I wish there was a space for a Black girl from Iowa to tell her story and share the stories of others. Wait, I could probably just go ahead and do that myself. And even in doing this, I'm even starting to uncover some things that I didn't really even recognize about myself um, that aren't healed. There are conversations that I want to have with 9-year-old Emily and 15-year-old Emily and even 36-year-old Emily. You know what I mean? So I'm really happy that you gave yourself that time to truly reflect and think about what was really going to be important to you. I think that's awesome. That's awesome.
I mean, since doing that, I could say that I've learned something super powerful between me and my husband. Miscommunication is actually just hidden childhood trauma.
Woo!
So when I'm miscommunicating with you, it's because I've triggered you, and I don't know where your triggers are, and you probably don't either.
Have you ever thought about going into psychology? Because that is a nugget right there.
It gets deeper than that because every pivotal moment, both good and bad, if you put them on a timeline and go back and reframe them, all those positive moments you thought were positive, majority of them are actually positive. You don't realize it. Mm-hmm. But I think the moments in my life that are considered negative are actually what we call earned lessons, where the event will continue to repeat itself because we're creatures of habit. And so I actually embrace the lesson. And then when I embrace the lesson, my lens, right? I like to use lenses because I actually wear glasses.
Yes, she's holding up her glasses, ladies and gentlemen, and non-binary friends.
So imagine that, like, instead of being able to go to the eye doctor and get the right prescription, you only get the prescriptions based on the lessons you embrace. So each one you get closer and closer to a clearer vision of what it should be. Mm-hmm. Your life should be versus what you thought it was. Because with a blurred vision, all people look like mannequins.
Yeah, exactly. It's
all
each
learned lesson. Yeah. It gets clearer. So now I can see, oh, you got eyebrows. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
You got teeth. Oh,
yeah. Yep. Yep. Those bags under your eyes. Why are they so big? No, I'm kidding. Yeah. No. And you're absolutely right. You know, because one of my first interview that I had with Courtney Perry, she's a business owner here in Des Moines. You know, she says, no, like your failures are your lessons. Like if you can't take a lesson from a failure, then what was the point? You know, and just because you fail doesn't necessarily mean that you're never going to see success. You just got to think of it a different way. And that is huge.
I'll take it a level deeper than that. What I just did this past week.
Okay.
If you line up all of the pivotal moments, both positive and good, and rate them like, let's go 1 to 10, 10 to negative 10, and then put them in order, you'll find a behavior pattern. So my pattern is I have 4 negative events, followed by a positive, followed by another negative, and then a series of positive events. And everyone has this pattern. Now, once you discover what the pattern is, when you get into those cycles, you're like, oh, I got 3 more of these.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what they're going to be, but there's 3 more negative events coming. Let me brace myself. So we stop spending on Amazon. I don't know if it's going to be a financial one, right, or if it's just going to be a family event where people are arguing. The point is, that ends up being what we call our backstory. Mm-hmm. So now you understand your backstory. Your backstory strongly influences what you end up pursuing. Because it's based on how you see and perceive those events.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, everybody's got a story to tell. And no one's going to write the story for us. We're the ones that do it. So, absolutely, yeah. Those are some good nuggets. So, I really hope that y'all had a pen, some paper with you, wrote some of those things down, because that is huge. And again, Cimone, I'm so happy that we got to have this conversation today. I'm definitely going to have you back because I definitely want to dive a little bit more. In addition to all of her accolades, y'all, Cimone is also an author. She wrote Manufactured Education, Leveraging College to Accelerate Your Career Without Selling Your Soul. So I will be sure to put a link and to where you can purchase that below in the show notes. I like for my guests, especially if you have a platform, let people know where they can find you, social media, your website, If they want to book you for a speaking engagement, I am rolling out the red carpet to you, my friend. Let the people know where that they can find you.
Absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn, Cimone Wright-Hamor. You can also find me on Facebook and Twitter at Hey Simone, or you can go to my website at simonespeaks.com.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Yes. And please, if you guys can get her and come and talk to some of your students, like I said, I've heard her speak and it's fantastic. And she's always back at Iowa State too, doing wonderful things. So again, Cimone, thank you so much for being on this show today. We will definitely have you back to talk about your book. And so what I'm going to do right now, you guys, is I am going to take a quick break and then we'll come back for an episode reflection and a teaser for next week's show. So I'll be right back. A huge thank you to Dr. Cimone Wright-Hamor for taking the time and speaking with me today, not only about her current path and what she's currently doing, but also how she got there. I think resilience was really one of the key themes to this interview that I had with her. And a couple of things that she did bring up was number one, having somebody in her circle that not only cared about her and cared about her well being, but cared about her future. And I really think that it gives me personally pause to think about who those people were in my life that helped me want to continue, want to grow, want to develop, and all of those great things. And then I highly commend her for taking everything that she has learned, all of her knowledge, all of her experience, and giving back to students. And being interested not only in what it is that they want to do, but also being passionate in providing them the advice that they need to essentially exceed their dreams and make them become a reality. So I definitely think that that's fantastic. And again, thank you so much, Cimone, for being on the show. And I really hope you guys caught some of the gems that she did drop in this episode. They were incredibly powerful, and I loved everything about our conversation. And I definitely hope to have her back talking about her book and any future endeavors she has. So if you love this episode, don't forget to follow me on Instagram and TikTok at BlackGirlIowa for more behind the scenes content updates and also all of the vibes and all of my random musings about things happening in the world. Check out my blog and website, www.blackgirliowa.com, where I will be posting reflections, some features, and some more stories that are not only going to connect with this podcast, but also previous episodes. And also, please make sure that you are liking, commenting, and sharing this podcast with anyone and everyone. The podcast is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and over on YouTube. So, however you decide to listen to the show, I've got you covered. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. And remember, until next time, stay bold, stay rooted, and keep showing up for yourself and each other. I'll catch you guys on the next one.